So, we got two separate leaks, both of which line up with each other, and are on the currently developing next mainline Sonic title, a sequel to Sonic Frontiers, which it will not be called Sonic Frontiers 2. However, like how Rangers was the internal name, so they didn't spoil the real name, Sonic Frontiers 2 is this project's internal name, but rest assured, further down the line, they will reveal a new, unique name for it. Now, with these two leaks, I'll cover where they line up with each other after reading the second one, but there are a lot of consistencies with specific phrases such as villages of NPCs being said in both posts, and there's a lot of very specific details in both of these, so I think the odds these are actually legit are really good, since there's literally not one aspect that doesn't line up with each other. Now, normally I would just brush these off as nothing. However, since the January 2021 4chan post detailing Sonic Frontiers almost 2 years before release got fully confirmed when the game dropped, with the leak even name-dropping Sonic Rangers, the internal name of the project. Because of this factor, I think we should take these new ones seriously, since there's two of them and they both line up. However, at the same time, do take these with a grain of salt, as until we see the game itself, we won't fully know if these are confirmed or not. So, there's two separate 4chan posts detailing the next mainline Sonic title, and I'll cover them both in order of release. But first, do the YouTube Pledge of Allegiance and drop a like. It genuinely helps share this news around, as well as double check your subs, since YouTube randomly unsubs sometimes. And if you're feeling extra patriotic, join my Discord, where I have a beta and feedback form for a mobile game I've been working with a small team on, and the links are in my releases channel if you want to be a beta tester. Now, to get into the meat of it, there are two leaks covering this next mainline game to cover, and I'll do them one at a time with chapters, so you can go back and forth and see what lines up. The dates of these are July 11th, 2024 for the first one, and September 2024 for the second one. So not only recently surfaced, but both are written pretty recently too. Now, to get into the first one from July, it reads, I have an insider who has a ton of info on Sega IPs in their current development status. I've been able to see footage of several indie Sega projects, Jet Set Radio, Persona 6, and a Chow game. I will share what I currently know about the new open world Sonic, since I am also a fan. Lol. Working title is Frontiers 2. Game is developed by Morio Kishimoto, with virtually the entire team returning from Frontiers, and some new staff from previous Boost games are returning as game designers. Kishimoto's team has effectively doubled in size after Frontier's success in Japan. Sega is trying to maintain AAA output with the open world format in Sonic Team's future releases, so polish and quality are at the forefront. Game began conceptualization shortly after Frontier's release and began full-scale development in October of 2023 after the last DLC was released. Will only be on current-gen consoles, PC, and Switch too. No legacy Switch release. Cyberspace will be returning in some way, but will be following similar design philosophies to the Final Horizon. Only one giant island, and footage from the open world suggests that they're attempting a less realistic art style. The environment the player was exploring was a lot like Angel Island Zone, and there were some subterranean areas. Environments are not finished at all. Ton of placeholders and asset reuse since it's early. There are NPCs and what looks like villages from what I saw. Other areas were filled with enemies which could attack said villages. Every inhabited area had some level of platforming. Combat looks virtually unchanged from Frontiers, and there's a boost like Frontiers, but it is not the main way to go fast. It's only really useful at slower speeds to launch you forwards. Conserving momentum is key. Game has been in full development for less than a year, so not a lot is finished, and what is primitive. It is jank, but not in the same way as Frontiers. Very early footage though. Expect a late 2026 release, possibly 2027, short teaser, mid-2025. And not only does this all line up with the leak I'm reading next, but this also lines up with what Kishimoto has been saying he wants to do in his next mainline title, as through his Twitter replies, he's directly addressed a lot of the concerns people have had, such as the emptiness of the open zone with the lack of Sonic structures, or really anything besides the popping in rails and springs that says Sonic about the unreal asset-looking islands you play on. As well as a big part of addressing the emptiness is adding NPCs around the play space to give the world some more life, something that people infamously loved about Sonic Unleashed, and make these worlds feel like they have much more going on in them. I think the gameplay aspects of Sonic Frontiers, such as how he controls, at least by the final update, were actually pretty good. Now, that's not including cyberspace, as those controls are a whole different story. But regarding the open zone, to hear that these aspects haven't been greatly changed doesn't surprise me, and with Shadow Generations satisfying Boost fans' desires, hopefully they can move away from that in this next title and embrace a more adventure-based style and level format. Something Kishimoto has explicitly said multiple times in his tweets that he wants to do in this next game, and he's very openly indicated that he's thinking now is the time the adventure format returns, something not even our hype man Azuka has ever said, as he always just says, I don't know, maybe one day. But with the actual director of this game saying he wants to make a hybrid that leans towards the adventure format, hearing that I can't help but get excited. And knowing the emptiness in Frontiers, something that's my biggest issue with the game, is going to be an aspect that's going to be fixed, is something I'm very optimistic about Kishimoto achieving with this next title. The leak specifically states that, quote, there is a boost like Frontiers, but it is not the main way to go fast. It's only really useful at slower speeds to launch you forwards. Conserving momentum is key. And ironically, the key word is momentum here. Kishimoto specifically said that he wanted to cater to all these fans who have been very vocal about wanting momentum to return in mainline Sonic games. And he said he wanted to experiment in a way with both the spin dash and the boost, something he successfully tested an early version of in the second update of Frontiers. And with all the feedback about the lack of momentum in not just Frontiers, but many recent Sonic games, to see this finally addressed will really change up how you play the game, as all the structures and the entire levels will have to be tailored around that format. A change that I think will be for the better, but really only time will tell. Certain phrases like, quote, one island, I would take with a grain of salt, because they also state environments are not finished at all, ton of placeholders and asset reuse since it's early. So the likelihood they would have created more than one of these open zones at this stage is pretty low. So it's still not clear whether there will be just one massive world or a handful of smaller ones. And by smaller, I mean much bigger than Frontiers. But granted, the Frontiers islands don't feel very big in my opinion. The post does mention, quote, expect a late 2026 release, possibly 2027, short teaser mid-2025. But I don't know how cemented that information is, and also that range is massive. So until it's further in development, it seems kind of pointless to speculate on release date. Rather, just know it will probably drop within the next 4 years. But that's all I have to say for this first post. Now, to get into the second leak from September that also recently surfaced, it reads, lucky to have an insider who can provide me with Sega info. Sonic dev footage has also been floating around the company. I saw roughly 12 minutes and already know a bit of dev info about this game. Working title for this game is Sonic Frontiers 2. It's directed by Morio Kishimoto. Game has been in full development since a couple months before the final Horizon released. AAA dev size, set on a floating island called Summit Spire. As you can imagine, it's related to Angel Island, but it's on top of another bigger, grounded island. The main island floats via a digitized version of the Master Emerald. Map is way bigger than any island in Frontiers. Movement is drastically different as well. Camera is closer to Sonic, but goes further as you gain speed. It is very dynamic, but also very clunky. Obviously, very early in development, and the game is buggy, but seemingly the combat remains unchanged. Almost same exact moves as Frontiers. A good bit of the map is kind of like Green Forest. There is a kingdom area, and also an area that resembles Sky Sanctuary, but blue. I'm pretty sure they're using assets from Sonic X Shadow Generations Kingdom Valley, and there's not a single area in the game that looks even halfway finished. There are portals underground that are presumably cyberspace. I know for a fact that cyberspace is in the game, and I'm guessing this is it. Villages with alive NPCs. It's kind of like Minecraft pillager raids, where sometimes you had to save the village for a reward. No humans though. Psyloop is a returning feature. The gimmick of this game is the surge ability, which is basically the boost, but way faster, and is used to gain crazy momentum. Doesn't last long, and it has to be charged up with rings, kinda like a regular boost. Momentum. I know the director for Unleashed is returning this time, just as a game designer, and some peeps from Color Slash Gens are back in similar roles. Has poppin'. Sega is giving Sonic Team the resources to match their confidence in the future of Sonic, which they mention it's been in development since right before the final Horizon release, and was also indicated by Kishimoto's tweets where he openly said they had already begun development and was getting input from the audience on Twitter on what features to implement or not. Something I covered extensively in a series of videos, as all of these tweets were in Japanese and it was hard to sift through the hundreds of nothing replies to see the juice of the info he was giving out. And there's a playlist of them title card here. Now, one thing I find really interesting is both leaks mentioned that the island both looks very reminiscent of Angel Island Zone and is extremely massive, bigger than ever before, he says. Something I would definitely like in having different biomes or themed sections like other open world games such as Skate 3 or GTA would be absolutely fascinating to see with Sonic. And with both of the leaks mentioning the place they saw being reminiscent of Angel Island Zone, I imagine Kishimoto has taken the criticism of Frontier's uninspired open zones truly to heart, and we'll finally see Sonic in an actually Sonic-themed open world. The leak specifically mentions that the floating island it's set on is called Summit Spire, so that's a specific name drop that could be confirmed if we see it in the game's demos or in the files upon release. Both of these leaks also specifically mention villages with NPCs, so that's an aspect I look forward to seeing, as the double mention makes me confident this will be the case upon release. They also both mention the gameplay being about the same, with the second link also mentioning the combat is also about the same. However, with both of these, remember that the game by all accounts appears to be fairly early in development, so it's very possible they just took the Sonic gameplay from Frontiers and directly imported it into this, making some smaller changes, and are focusing on developing the world out a bit and refining the existing mechanics before they start innovating with new mechanics that they'll have to tweak and tailor the levels around so platforming sections work right and you don't get stuck anywhere, as well as making sure that, like the Psy Loop, the game implements some new mechanic that this title will introduce to the series. So in this early dev moment, already created placeholders from Frontiers would make the most sense while they buckle down and flesh out the world a bit and create places to test out these new mechanics. So I definitely wouldn't write off new gameplay features at this early in the cycle. The leak specifically writes about the Surge feature, which is the current name of this game's gimmick, and they describe it as, quote, basically the boost but way faster. It is used to gain crazy momentum. And with the first leak specifically mentioning conserving momentum is key, plus the second one having a single point that just says momentum, makes me excited to see a massive open world where momentum's the focus. So there will probably be flatter areas in towns, but massive slopes and hills around the rest of the world, which, as a reminder, is apparently not only massive, but also filled to the brim with Sonic-themed terrains, something I'm extremely excited to see, as the lack of structures in the open zones were easily one of its biggest issues, and to play a game where you can run around, climb, go through loops, etc. makes me all in for this next Sonic title. My hype train is like through the roof. But to move on to the next point, a really interesting aspect that aligns with both leaks is the second one saying, quote, I know the director for Unleashed is returning this time just as a game designer, and some peeps from Colors/Gens are back in similar roles. And the first post saying, quote, some new staff from previous Boost games are returning as game designers, meaning we get to see Kishimoto, who actually seems to finally get the Sonic formula after all these years, be at the head of all these talented people. Like Sonic Unleashed's director really opens the capabilities of this next game, as with how well Sonic Frontier sold, and the second leak writing, quote, Sega is giving Sonic Team the resources to match their confidence in the future of Sonic, making it very clear they want this next mainline title to be a massive commercial and critical hit, so they will throw everything they can at this to make sure it's a winner in the marketplace, and even create a new generation of Sonic fans, with it being good enough to reach a massive wave of both new players and older fans who have drifted away from the franchise, something the Sonic movies have been a major help in doing, with Sonic Movie 2 being, in my opinion, one of the best pieces of Sonic media ever made, not including games of course, but you know, like movies, shorts, TV shows, that stuff. Something that will hopefully get beaten with Sonic Movie 3. And with that, drop a like. There's a beta for the mobile game I've been creating, as well as a feedback form in my releases channel from my Discord server, which is linked below. Oh, and double check your subbed, you know. You gotta sub to Based Raccoon Guy, alright? No one else is based. This guy, he's based. And that's all for today. See you in a few days with another video. I already started on it, so shouldn't be long. And lots of love. Peace and bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Subscribe.